Most people are not emotionally intelligent. They're emotionally predictable. And that single mistake is costing them opportunities, power, influence, respect, sometimes without them even realizing it. Think about it. If emotional intelligence is really about understanding emotions, then why are so many emotionally expressive people constantly manipulated by them? Why do they keep saying things they regret, making decisions they later question, and handing control of their state of mind to people who never earned that power? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The moment someone can predict your emotional reaction, they can start controlling your behavior. And most people make that job incredibly easy. They call it authenticity. They call it vulnerability. They call it being honest about how they feel. But what if the very thing you've been taught to celebrate is actually the thing making you weak? What if real emotional intelligence has almost nothing to do with expressing emotions and everything to do with governing them? Because the people who quietly dominate rooms, negotiations, conflicts, relationships, and high-pressure situations all share one strange characteristic. They feel deeply, but they reveal selectively. They experience emotion, but they are not owned by it, and that difference changes everything. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The greatest strategists in history understood it. The most dangerous minds have always understood it. Emotion is not the enemy. Losing authority over emotion is. Yet most people spend their entire lives trapped inside a psychological system they never chose, a hidden operating system, one built from childhood experiences, social conditioning, fears, insecurities, disappointments, and unconscious habits. It runs automatically, it reacts automatically, and worst of all, it disguises itself as your personality. So when you become angry, you think it's you. When you become defensive, you think it's you. When anxiety takes over, when frustration explodes, when someone's words lie rent-free in your mind for days, you think you're making conscious choices. But often, you're not choosing at all. You're executing a program, and programs can be rewritten. That's exactly what this video is about. Today, I'm going to show you 7 mental upgrades rooted in the principles of cold intelligence, strategic thinking, and psychological mastery. These are not tricks. They're not motivational slogans. They're mental frameworks designed to help you stay calm when others lose control, think clearly when emotions cloud judgment, and become far more difficult to manipulate. Because the strongest person in any room is rarely the loudest, rarely the most emotional, rarely the most expressive. It's usually the one who can remain clear while everyone else is drowning in their reactions. By the end of this video, you'll understand why, and once you see it, you'll never look at emotional intelligence the same way again. Number 1. Shrink the spike. Expand the mind. Let me tell you something most men never realize. The biggest mistakes of your life probably didn't happen when you lacked intelligence. They happened when you lost control for 10 seconds. 10 seconds. A text message that triggered you, a disrespectful comment, a woman pulling away, a business deal going sideways, a betrayal you didn't see coming. And suddenly, the version of you that spent years building discipline, experience, and wisdom disappears. A different man takes the wheel. The reactive man, the emotional man, the dangerous part. He feels justified. That's why so many men destroy opportunities with absolute certainty they were doing the right thing. Think about it. Have you ever sent a message you regretted an hour later? Ever argued with someone and spent the entire drive home replaying what you should have said? Ever watched a situation collapse because you reacted instead of observing? Of course you have. Every man has. The problem is not emotion. The problem is emotional velocity, the speed at which emotion hijacks thought. Neuroscience confirms it, but you don't need science to see it. You've lived it. A single emotional spike can turn a composed man into a reckless one. A calm man sees options. An emotional man sees threats. A calm man gathers information. An emotional man seeks immediate relief. And immediate relief has ruined more men than bad luck ever did. Watch what happens in real life. A girlfriend becomes distant. One man notices it and observes. Another panics. He double texts. He demands answers. He seeks reassurance. And within days, He creates the very outcome he was afraid of. Not because she left, because his emotional spike made him abandon his position. The same thing happens in business. The same thing happens in friendships. The same thing happens in negotiations. Pressure enters, emotion rises, intelligence leaves the room. This is why emotional compression is a superpower, not suppression, compression. The wave still arrives. You still feel anger, you still feel jealousy, you still feel frustration. But instead of becoming the wave, you watch it. Most men have what I call a wide emotional profile. Tiny trigger, massive reaction, long recovery. Someone disrespects them at 9 a.m., and they're still mentally arguing with that person at midnight. The event lasted 10 seconds. The emotional occupation lasted 15 hours. That's weakness disguised as passion. Power works differently. Power feels the spike and shortens it. Instead of feeding it, it contains it. And here's where the transformation begins. Not during the major crises, not during the heartbreak, not during the betrayal. It begins in the smallest moments imaginable. The slow driver, the delayed email, the rude stranger, the inconvenience that nobody else notices. Those moments are your training ground. Every irritation is a repetition. Every pause is a rep. Every moment you refuse to react automatically, you are literally rewiring the architecture of your mind. Because the pause is where power lies. 1 second, that's all. 1 second between stimulus and response. 1 second where the animal stops and the strategist appears. And eventually something changes. The spike still comes, but it no longer owns you. You stop becoming emotionally available to every trigger life throws at you. And that's when people notice something different about you. Not because you became colder, because you became harder to move. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The fox cannot see traps through panic, and the lion cannot command respect through emotional instability. Both require the same thing: a nervous system that obeys you, not the other way around. Remember this. Composure is not the absence of emotion. It is the refusal to surrender authority to it. The man who controls the size of his reaction controls the direction of his life. Most men never learn this. The few who do become almost impossible to manipulate. Number 2, cognitive decoupling. Let me expose one of the most dangerous things your mind does. Not because it's rare, because it happens all day, every day, and most men never notice it. A woman takes longer than usual to reply. Your boss sends a short message. A friend suddenly becomes distant. Someone looks at you differently. And before reality has even finished presenting the facts, your mind has already built a verdict. She's losing interest. He doesn't respect me. They're talking behind my back. I'm being replaced. I'm losing control. Sound familiar? Of course it does. Because the male ego hates uncertainty. It would rather invent a painful answer than sit in the discomfort of not knowing. Read that again. Most men are not suffering from reality, they're suffering from the story they created about reality. And the worst part, the story feels true. That's the trap. The brain is a meaning-making machine. It cannot tolerate empty space. Give it incomplete information, and it will rush to fill the gaps with old wounds, old fears, old humiliations, and old rejections. It becomes emotional autocomplete. A woman doesn't text back for 6 hours. Fact. Your brain says she's talking to another man. Story. Your business partner sounds less enthusiastic on a call. Fact. Your brain says he's planning to cut you out. Story. Someone disagrees with you publicly. Fact. Your brain says you've lost status. Story. Do you see it? Most men aren't reacting to events, they're reacting to interpretations. They're fighting ghosts they created themselves, and those ghosts quietly control their decisions. I once watched a man destroy a relationship in less than a week. Not because she cheated, not because she lied, not because anything actually happened. She became busy, that's all. But inside his head, a movie started playing. Maybe she's losing attraction. Maybe she's testing me. Maybe there's another guy. Maybe I'm about to get replaced. And once the movie started, every action became contaminated. He became needy, suspicious, reactive. He demanded certainty where none existed, and eventually, she left, not because his fears were true, but because his fears became his behavior. That's how most self-sabotage works. The story creates the emotion creates the behavior creates the outcome, and then the outcome becomes proof that the story was true. A perfect psychological prison. This is why cognitive decoupling is one of the most powerful skills a man can develop. You separate the event from the interpretation ruthlessly. The event is data, the interpretation is speculation, and until proven otherwise, they are not the same thing. The next time something triggers you, stop. Strip it down, remove the drama, remove the ego, remove the narrative. Ask yourself, what actually happened? Not what it means, not what it says about me, not what disaster my mind is predicting. What actually happened? And ask a second question that very few men ever ask. What are the variables I cannot see? Because reality is usually far more complicated than your first emotional conclusion. The fastest explanation is rarely the most accurate, it is simply the one your nervous system produced first. And speed is not intelligence, calm observation is. This is where cold intelligence begins. Not in dominance, not in charisma, not in manipulation. It begins in the microscopic gap between what happened and what you decide it means. Most men collapse that gap instantly. Powerful men expand it. They stand in uncertainty longer, they observe longer, they collect more information. And because of that, they see what everyone else misses. Remember this, the man who controls the story inside his head becomes difficult to manipulate. The man who believes every story his mind creates becomes easy to control. Because if someone can control your interpretation, they never need to control reality. And that is a level of psychological warfare most people will never even realize is happening. Number 3, outcome layering. Let me tell you a secret that most men learn too late. Your life is not shaped by the decisions you make, it's shaped by the consequences you fail to see. That's the difference. The average man sees the move, the dangerous man sees the chain reaction. Most people live trapped in what I call layer 1, thinking. Something happens, they feel pressure, they react. A woman pulls away, they chase. Someone disrespects them, they fire back. An opportunity appears, they rush in. A deal feels wrong, they walk away immediately. Everything is driven by the emotional weather of the moment. Whatever relieves pressure fastest wins. But here's what nobody tells you. The decision that feels powerful today often creates weakness tomorrow, and the decision that feels uncomfortable today often creates power later. That's why so many men spend years accidentally engineering their own problems. Not because they're stupid, but because they're impatient. Think about the man who constantly seeks validation from women. Every text he sends feels harmless. Every extra message feels justified. Every attempt to gain certainty feels logical. Layer 1 says, send the message. Instant relief. Layer 2, she senses neediness. Layer 3, attraction dies, respect drops, his position weakens, and months later he tells himself he was unlucky. No, he was blind. He only saw the first move. The same thing happens with money, business, friendships, and status. Life punishes men who only think one move ahead. I once knew a guy who couldn't tolerate uncertainty. Every disagreement needed immediate resolution. Every silence required clarification. Every conflict demanded action. He thought he was being strong, decisive, assertive, but what he was really doing was obeying discomfort. And discomfort is a terrible advisor, because every time he rushed to solve the immediate problem, he created 3 new ones he couldn't see. That's how most men operate. They're not making decisions, they're escaping emotions, and those are 2 very different things. This is where outcome layering changes everything. Before any move, force yourself to run the stack. If I do this, what happens next? And then what? And then what? Most people stop at the first answer. Cold intelligence keeps going, because the third layer is where reality hides. The first layer is emotional. The third layer is strategic. The first layer asks, how do I feel right now? The third layer asks, what pattern am I creating? And patterns are what determine your future, not isolated actions. Patterns. Every reaction teaches people how to treat you. Every emotional outburst sets a precedent. Every desperate action broadcasts information. Every moment of discipline broadcasts information too. The world is always recording. Most men think they're making a decision. What they're actually doing is establishing a reputation, a pattern, an identity, a predictable behavioral loop. And people respond to those patterns far more than they respond to words. This is why strategic delay is such a powerful weapon. Not because waiting is magical, but because time exposes things. The emotional mind wants immediate movement. The strategic mind wants additional information. The emotional man asks, "What should I do?" The dangerous man asks, "What becomes visible if I do nothing for another day?" That question alone has saved men from disastrous relationships, catastrophic investments, humiliating confrontations, and years of unnecessary suffering. Machiavelli understood something most people still don't. Power belongs to the man who can endure uncertainty longer than everyone else. Because while others are reacting to the board, he's studying the entire game. Remember this: weak men think in moments. Strong men think in patterns. But the rare man, the one who becomes truly difficult to manipulate, thinks in consequences. 3 moves ahead, 5 moves ahead. Sometimes 10. Because he understands a brutal truth. The future is usually decided long before it arrives. It's decided in the small choices everyone else dismissed as insignificant. And that's exactly where power begins. Number 4. Stop hearing words. Start seeing architecture. Most men spend their lives reacting to what people say. The rare few pay attention to why it was said. And that difference changes everything. Here's a truth that most people will never notice. Almost nobody tells you exactly what's happening. Not in business. Not in relationships. Not in social circles. Not even in families. People talk in words, but they move through incentives. And if you only listen to the words, you'll spend your entire life confused. You'll keep asking questions like, what happened? Why did she suddenly change? Why did he turn against me? Why did this deal fall apart? Wrong question. The real question is, what changed beneath the surface? Because people rarely change without a reason. What changes are the forces acting on them? A woman who was warm suddenly becomes cold. Most men immediately make it about themselves. What did I do? Did I say something wrong? Am I losing her? Notice the ego hidden inside those questions. Everything revolves around them. But the man who sees structure asks something different. What changed in her environment? What new option appeared? What pressure entered her world? What incentive shifted? What calculation is she making now that she wasn't making before? Completely different frame. One creates anxiety, the other creates clarity. Most men are addicted to personalizing everything, and that addiction blinds them. They think they're observing reality, but they're actually observing their own emotions. Let me give you an example. You've probably seen this happen. A guy enters a workplace. Everyone seems friendly. People smile, shake his hand, welcome him in. 6 months later, the atmosphere changes. Suddenly someone becomes passive-aggressive. Someone starts undermining him. Someone who seemed supportive now acts distant. The average man thinks, they changed. The perceptive man thinks, the hierarchy changed. Maybe he gained status. Maybe he became competition. Maybe his success altered someone's position. The words changed because the incentives changed. That's the architecture. And once you start seeing architecture, people become dramatically more predictable, not because you're manipulating them, because you're finally observing what drives them. Here's something uncomfortable. Most confidence is performance, most aggression is insecurity, and most arrogance is fear wearing expensive clothes. And most social behavior is driven by invisible negotiations happening underneath the conversation. Power, status, validation, scarcity, approval, leverage, protection. You start noticing things other people miss. The loudest man in the room often has the least control. The man constantly talking about his value is usually trying to convince himself The person demanding respect often feels they have none, and the person pretending not to care is sometimes the one who cares the most. The words become secondary. The structure becomes primary. This is what cold intelligence actually feels like. You walk into a room and stop reading personalities. You start reading positions. Who has leverage? Who needs approval? Who is protecting status? Who is afraid of losing control? Who benefits if this situation moves in a particular direction? Suddenly, confusion disappears. Because confusion usually comes from staring at the surface. The structure underneath is almost always far more honest than the conversation itself. Before reacting to anyone, ask yourself 3 questions. What are they trying to protect? What are they trying to gain? And what am I representing to them right now? An ally, a resource, a threat, or an obstacle? Those 3 questions will reveal more than 1,000 conversations ever could. Because beneath every disagreement, every attraction, every alliance, every betrayal, there is an architecture. Most people never see it. They spend their lives chasing words. The man who learns to see structure stops getting blindsided by human nature. And once you understand the architecture behind people's behavior, you stop reacting emotionally to the game. You start seeing the board, and the man who sees the board always has an advantage over the men staring at the pieces. Number 5. The 72-hour neutrality drill. This may be the most dangerous skill in this entire video. Not because it's complicated, but because almost nobody can do it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most men don't lose because they're weak. They lose because they're rushed. Rushed into sending the message, rushed into making the call, rushed into confronting someone, rushed into explaining themselves, rushed into proving their value. And if you look closely, you'll notice something disturbing. The moments that caused the most damage in your life probably felt urgent at the time. That's how the trap works. Urgency is one of the favorite disguises of emotion. A woman pulls away, your chest tightens. Your mind starts racing. Suddenly you feel like you need answers right now. You need clarity right now. You need certainty right now. But do you? Or are you simply trying to escape discomfort? Most men never ask that question. They obey the feeling, and the feeling leads them straight into the ambush. I once watched a man destroy months of attraction in a single evening. Not because he lacked confidence, because he couldn't tolerate uncertainty. A woman he was seeing became distant for 2 days. 2 days, that's all. No rejection, no argument, no breakup, just silence. But inside his head, a war started. Maybe she's losing interest, maybe there's another guy, maybe I've already lost her. The anxiety became unbearable, so he acted. Long messages, questions, explanations, emotional pressure disguised as communication. And by the end of the week, the attraction that might have survived the silence died under the weight of his reaction. The irony. The thing he feared wasn't what destroyed the connection. His response did. That's why the 72-hour neutrality drill is so powerful. For 72 hours, anything emotionally charged waits. Not forever, just long enough for reality to separate itself from emotion. Because here's what most people never understand. Real urgency is rare. A building on fire is urgent. A medical emergency is urgent. A genuine deadline is urgent. Most of the things your mind labels urgent are not urgent at all. They're emotional discomfort demanding movement, and emotional discomfort is a terrible strategist. The reactive mind believes action equals control, but often, action is simply panic wearing a disguise. This is where the second part of the drill begins, observation without obedience. Most people think emotional mastery means becoming numb. Wrong. You feel everything. The anger, the jealousy, the fear, the frustration, the desire. You don't suppress it, you study it like a scientist studying a phenomenon. Where did it appear in your body? What story immediately followed? What future did your mind begin predicting? Watch it all, but don't obey it. That distinction changes everything, because the moment you stop treating emotion like a command, It becomes information. And information can be evaluated, questioned, ignored, or used strategically. Most men have been trained to believe that every strong emotion deserves a reaction. It doesn't. Sometimes the strongest move is doing absolutely nothing. Not because you're passive, because you're collecting intelligence. And here's the part nobody tells you. The first manipulator you must defeat is not another person. It's the voice inside your own head. The one whispering, respond now, fix this now, act now, do something. That voice has cost men relationships, fortunes, reputations, and years of peace. Machiavelli understood that deception is most dangerous when you don't recognize it as deception. And the greatest deceiver you'll ever encounter is your own emotional urgency. The moment you learn to sit with discomfort without immediately acting on it, something changes. You stop becoming predictable, you stop becoming easy to provoke, easy to pressure, easy to manipulate. A space appears between feeling and action, and inside that space is where power lives. Remember this. Weak men react to emotions. Average men suppress emotions. Dangerous men observe emotions, then decide whether those emotions deserve obedience. Most don't. And once you discover that, you become a very difficult man to control. Number 6. Strategic leverage architecture. This is where most men lose the game without even realizing they're playing it, because they believe power comes from force. Push harder, argue louder, work longer, fight back, dominate. That's the fantasy. But if you've lived long enough, you've already discovered something uncomfortable. The harder you push against some problems, the stronger they become. You try to convince someone, they resist. You apply more pressure, they resist harder. You try to force attraction, it disappears. You try to force respect, you lose it. You try to force outcomes, and somehow the outcome moves further away. Why? Because force attacks symptoms, leverage attacks causes. And those are not the same thing. Look carefully at the men who seem to move through life with unusual effectiveness. The men who get cooperation without begging for it. The men who gain influence without demanding it. The men who create movement without appearing to push. Most people think they're lucky, they're not. They understand leverage. They understand where reality bends, and more importantly, where it doesn't. Here's a brutal truth most men never learn. Resistance is information. The average man sees resistance and gets emotional. The strategic man sees resistance and gets curious. He asks a different question. Not, how do I push harder? But, what is this resistance protecting? Because every wall exists for a reason. Every objection, every conflict, every hesitation, every rejection. Something underneath it is being protected: status, security, control, comfort, power, identity, fear. Find that hidden element, and suddenly the entire situation starts making sense. I once watched 2 businessmen negotiate the exact same deal. One pushed relentlessly, more calls, more pressure, more persuasion. The other barely pushed at all. Instead, he spent his time understanding what the other side was afraid of losing. Within a week, the first man was still fighting resistance. The second man had the agreement signed. Not because he was smarter, because he stopped fighting the wall and identified what the wall was protecting. That's leverage. And the same principle applies everywhere. Relationships, business, social dynamics, even conflict. Especially conflict. A lot of men secretly believe strength means confrontation. Sometimes it does, most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time, confrontation is simply an emotional need disguised as strategy. The ego wants visible victory, but cold intelligence wants effective outcomes. Those are very different objectives. The ego wants to win the argument, whereas leverage wants to change the conditions that created the argument. The ego wants to overpower people. Leverage wants to make resistance unnecessary. And here's where things become dangerous. Once you start seeing leverage, human behavior becomes far more predictable. You stop asking, how do I force this? And start asking, where is the pressure point? Every system has one. Every organization, every relationship, every negotiation, every social circle, every hierarchy. There is always a hidden point where a small adjustment creates a massive shift, but most men never find it because they're addicted to effort. They worship intensity. They confuse exhaustion with effectiveness. But reality doesn't reward effort. Reality rewards precision. Think about a master craftsman splitting stone. He doesn't smash randomly. He studies the grain, finds the weakness, and applies pressure exactly where the structure is already prepared to move. Then, the stone appears to break effortlessly. People watching think it was strength, but it wasn't. It was understanding. That's how power actually works. Not through dramatic displays, not through emotional confrontations, and not through constant aggression. The most dangerous men are often the quietest, because while everyone else is trying to overpower the system, they're studying it, mapping it, understanding it, finding the one move that changes 10 others. Remember this: average men use force, smart men use strategy, but cold, calculated men use leverage. And leverage is dangerous because, from the outside, it looks like luck. Nobody sees the observation, nobody sees the patience, and nobody sees the analysis. They only see the result, a small move, a massive outcome, and they never understand what really happened behind the curtain. Number 7. The psychological trade-off. Now we arrive at the part nobody talks about, the cost. Because every transformation has one. And if you've followed everything in this video, if you've learned to compress emotional spikes, separate facts from stories, think 3 moves ahead, read structures instead of words, and resist emotional urgency, something is going to happen. Something nobody warned you about. You are going to start seeing things you cannot unsee. At first, it feels like a superpower. Then it starts feeling like a burden. You'll notice the hidden negotiations inside conversations, the need for validation disguised as confidence, the insecurity disguised as arrogance, the manipulation disguised as concern, the desperation disguised as love, the weakness disguised as aggression. And once you see it, it's everywhere. Suddenly, you're sitting in a room listening to a conversation and realizing nobody is discussing what they're actually discussing. The words say one thing. The incentives say another. The emotions say something else entirely. And for the first time, you're hearing all 3 layers simultaneously. That's when the distance begins, not because you're better than anyone, but because you're processing a different reality. Let me ask you something. Have you ever outgrown a version of yourself so completely that old conversations started feeling strange? Old habits felt strange. Old reactions felt strange. Even people you genuinely cared about started feeling unfamiliar. Not because they changed, because you did. That's what happens here. The man who begins to understand psychological dynamics often discovers that most social interaction is built on unconscious scripts, predictable scripts. Someone seeks validation. Someone else provides it. Someone seeks attention. Someone else rewards it. Someone seeks dominance. Someone else submits. The pattern repeats, day after day, year after year. Most people never notice it, but you do. And that awareness creates a strange kind of isolation. Not loneliness, isolation. They're different. Loneliness is wanting connection and not having it. Isolation is having connection, but realizing very few people see what you see. It's like learning the hidden rules of a game everyone else thinks is random. And here's the part that hits hardest. The people who benefited from the old version of you may not like the new one. The moment you stop over-explaining yourself, some people get uncomfortable. The moment you stop reacting emotionally, some people get uncomfortable. The moment you stop seeking approval, some people get uncomfortable. Why? Because your predictability was useful to them. Your emotional reactions gave them information. Your need for validation gave them leverage, and your impulsiveness made you easy to influence. But now something has changed. You became harder to read, harder to provoke, harder to control. And human beings are deeply unsettled by things they cannot easily predict. Some relationships will shift, some will weaken, and a few may disappear entirely. And yes, that part is real. Nobody should lie to you about it. Growth has casualties. But here's what most men misunderstand. The isolation is temporary. It's not the destination. It's the bridge, the space between identities, the uncomfortable territory between who you used to be and who you're becoming. You have left one psychological world, but haven't fully entered the next. That's why everything feels strange. That's why old patterns no longer fit. That's why old conversations sometimes feel empty. You are recalibrating, and recalibration always feels unstable before it feels powerful. Eventually, something remarkable happens. You stop feeling isolated, not because you lowered your awareness, but because you found your level. You begin attracting people who think deeper, operate calmer, see further. People who don't need constant emotional performance to feel connected. People who understand silence, patience, discipline, and control. And that's when you realize something important. The goal was never to become cold. The goal was never to become detached. The goal was to become free. Free from manipulation. Free from emotional dependence. Free from unconscious patterns that once controlled your life. Remember this. The strongest men are not those who dominate others. They are the men who no longer need to be governed by the weaknesses that dominate everyone else. And that journey always requires crossing a bridge that feels lonely. Walk across it anyway. Because on the other side is a version of you that most people will never have the courage to become. Before you leave, I want to tell you something most people will never hear. Not because it's complicated, but because it's uncomfortable. And uncomfortable truths rarely become popular. Everything we've talked about in this video comes down to one brutal question. Who is actually in control of your life? Not who you say is in control. Not who you pretend is in control. Who is actually making your decisions when pressure arrives? Because pressure reveals ownership. Anyone can appear disciplined when life is calm. Anyone can appear confident when they're winning. Anyone can appear emotionally intelligent when nothing is threatening their ego. The real test comes when something valuable is on the line. Respect, status, money, a relationship, your future. That's when the mask comes off. That's when you find out whether you're operating your mind or your mind is operating you. And if we're being honest, most men never ask themselves that question. They spend years blaming circumstances, blaming timing, blaming luck, blaming women, blaming society, blaming competition. Meanwhile, the real battle was happening inside their own heads the entire time. I've seen men spend 10 years trying to change their lives while refusing to control the one thing creating most of their problems: their reactions. Not their enemies, not their environment, their reactions. Think about that. How many opportunities have died because of impatience? How many relationships collapsed because of emotional impulsiveness? How many business decisions were made from ego disguised as confidence? How many nights were wasted replaying conversations that existed only inside your own head? Most men are not defeated by reality. They're defeated by their interpretation of reality. And the system profits from that. Because a reactive man is predictable. A predictable man is controllable. And a controllable man is useful to everyone except himself. That's why emotional mastery is not self-help. It's self-sovereignty. It's the moment you stop handing the steering wheel to fear, anger, validation, insecurity, urgency, and ego. It's the moment you stop being emotionally outsourced. Because here's the truth nobody says out loud. The world does not reward potential, it rewards control. Control over attention, control over emotion, control over behavior, and control over impulse. The man who masters those things walks through the same world as everyone else, but experiences a completely different reality. The insults hit differently, the pressure hits differently, the temptations hit differently, and the setbacks hit differently. Because he is no longer being dragged through life by every emotional current that crosses his path, he becomes difficult to manipulate, difficult to provoke, difficult to read, and difficult to control. And in a world filled with people competing for your attention, your energy, your validation, and your emotional reactions, that is a form of power most people never develop. So let me leave you with this. The gap between the man you are today and the man you could become is probably much smaller than you think. It's not hidden behind some secret opportunity, it's not waiting for the perfect timing, and it's not locked inside a lucky break. More often than not, it's hidden inside a single decision. The decision to stop obeying every thought that enters your head. The decision to stop reacting automatically. The decision to become the observer rather than the prisoner. Because the moment you learn to govern your own mind, you stop being governed by everyone else's. If this video challenged the way you think, don't let it be another piece of content you consume and forget tomorrow. Most people watch, few apply. And that's exactly why most people stay the same. Subscribe if you're ready to go deeper, because here, we don't chase motivation. We study power. We study psychology. We study the hidden mechanics behind influence, discipline, perception, and control. And if you've made it this far, you already know something most people never discover. The greatest battlefield of your life was never out there. It was always inside your own mind. The only question now is whether you're finally ready to take command of it.